Oh my. All right. Thank you for joining. Um, like I said, I'm going to post this later on the full YouTube channel. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment below, hit that notification bell so you can get notified when more brilliant content like this is presented. So today I'm going to ask, was Jesus racist? The answer will surprise you. And is racism justifiable? So, and it's an honest question, okay? We've come through an age of like racism is bad, 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 bad. It's kindergarten thinking, okay? And that's good if you want to teach brutes or savages that something's wrong, then you have to say that. But we're not brutes and savages. If you're watching this and enjoying the comments, enjoying the content and liking and sharing and subscribing, you're definitely not a savage brute. Savage brutes will, come and leave very quickly because they don't understand this. And then they'll go to watching, I don't know, girls twerk or something like that, which is, I think, disgusting. Unless she's in my room or in my bed or something. All right. So anyway, let's get right into it. Is racism justifiable or is it just morally wrong? This was a question that was posed to me by one of the viewers, and I'm going to find it now. I meant to. Oh yeah, John Boy, John Boy, and okay. Anyway, I can see it on my main page, but I'm learning this damn YouTube. I've been on YouTube for so long, and you think I know it by now, like a back of my hand. Anyway, John Boy posted this, and I'm gonna actually just respond to his once this is published and everything. I'm gonna respond to him. So today I'm talking about the unpopular and unconventional but honest approach to racism. I'm not seeing that. Definitely not seeing it on the left because they are lost. And I'm kind of seeing, it's like the right is getting there. The right is very close to being very honest about racism, but you have a lot of people that harbor guilty feelings about being called racist and also feeling that they might be racist. And so it's like, it's very awkward on the right, but it's way better than it is on the left. The leftists are gone. I mean, literally, there's no soul on that side, or and no intellect when it comes to discussing racism. So I don't even go there. I have friends I love dearly that are pretty left-leaning, and when it comes to racism, I do talk to them about it, and I let them know, look, you'll see it in this video. Okay, anyway, so we're going to be talking about that. And so anyway, today we're going to be talking about what is racism actually, the evolutionary validity of racism, and why is racism justified in some cases, and how can we finally overcome it. And the reason no one is talking about this is because you'll get banned, but I have such a small platform that I'm more likely protected by the small numbers of people that watch my content. So I can be very honest about this. Also, being born with Mauryan privilege and the type of melanin that I have, melanin production that I have, there are certain things that I can get away with saying, but with the change in politics, you're going to see more and more people saying what I'm saying here, and it's going to happen. So we're moving into a golden age, and part of the golden age is understanding the validity of every single group, the value, of every single group that makes up this great nation we call the United States and this great planet we call home. All right, so let's get right into it. We're going to start off with the apparent racism in Jesus. Now, a lot of Christians are apologists. A lot of, like, especially the biblical scholars. If you ask, was Jesus racist? They do this. You always know when someone's about to lie to you, especially an intellectual. Well, technically, that immediately they start lying to you. The moment they go, well, technically, they're talking down to you and telling you you're stupid, and they're lying to you. So I've done it, because I used to think that being an intellectual mattered, and it doesn't. Intelligence is often negatively correlated with intellect. And this is unfortunate truth. Intellectuals won't survive an apocalypse, but a country bumpkin will, because they know how to build, they know how to shoot, they know how to grow, and they'll survive an apocalypse. So intellect, we've placed too much value on it. Anyway, let me get right into it. So Was Jesus racist? By modern standards, he probably was, but then again, there's like, it could go either way. So let me read these verses. You tell me if you think Jesus was racist. Let me know in the comment section below. So, Mark 11:17, Jesus is interacting with the people in the temple. There were a lot of merchants and animal salesmen and people like that in the temple, and Jesus got pissed off. He drew a whip, he grabbed some cords together and drove people out with the cord. And he yelled at them and said, my house, is it not written? My house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. The phrase that I want you to pay attention to here is, my house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer. You look up the word all nations, that includes heathens and Gentiles, the unwashed, unclean, undirty, the dirty Gentiles, the dirty heathens, the dirty pagans that the Jewish scribes and chief of priests looked down upon because they were like, these people were beneath us. So culturally, this society that Jesus was a part of had an inbuilt tribalism, an inbuilt racism, if you will, okay? And now it seems as if Jesus was transcending that here in Mark 11. But then you go to Matthew, and by the way, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are the synoptic gospels. You'll find a lot of the stories that in Matthew, in Mark, and Luke, and vice versa. Sometimes they're missing, and there are often differences between the stories, but that's just basically how the synoptic gospels work. John is an exceptional gospel. It's not one of the synoptic gospels, but it's my favorite gospel. Okay, and so we go into Matthew, the first of the gospels, and in Matthew 15, 25 through 28, it reads as follows. Jesus is dealing with a Canaanite woman. Then she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. And then she said, truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table. And of course, Jesus applauded her faith. O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole. She was sick. Her daughter was sick unto death. And so this woman was desperate. And she was a Canaanite, which was a filthy Gentile. And she was goyim, filthy, dirty, outcast. In other gospels, she's referred to as Samaritan, I think. So, there's a apparent discrepancy there. But correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below. So she came to Jesus humbly and with great humility and said, Lord, help me out. Jesus was like, why would I help you? I wouldn't give my graces to the dogs, basically, because her people were considered dogs to his people, because Jesus was from an elite society. Not only that, a lot of Christians don't tell you this, scholars don't tell you this, pastors don't tell you this. Jesus was from the upper echelon of first century Judean society. And I know a lot of people want to paint him as a pauper and as a loser, but he was from the Davidic line. If you know anything about caste systems and cultures, especially in first century Judea, the Davidic line, especially the line that he came through, that was the upper crust. That was the upper echelon of that society at the time. That was like being a Kennedy or a Trump or a Vanderbilt in the United States. Even a Clinton. They didn't really reproduce. It was just two of them, or an Obama, right? I mean, these are like outsiders. These are betrayers. But so basically, these are two instances where Jesus is extremely pro-Gentile and heathen and outsider in Mark 11. And then he's very condescending to a Canaanite, which is what his people came from, okay, in Matthew 15. So was Jesus racist? Let's get into it. First of all, let's talk about what is racism. What is racism actually? What is race versus what is ethnicity? And I'm going to go to a wonderful website that I'm going to link below that you need to go to. And it has a scary title on the page. The Master Races? AI freaks out when it sees that because it thinks Hitler's been resurrected. So on this brilliant website, it talks about differences here. And so, first of all, a lot of people, we're going to get into it, but so the Apex Human Awakening is a game-changing concept. It's based on the idea of ethnotomes or anthrotomes or anthrotypes. An ethnotome is simply a group of people derived from the Greek ethnos and tomos, and then anthrotype is basically the same thing by another word. So what is race? What is a race? Are black people a race? No, not definitively in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing definitive about the black race. All right. What about Chinese people? Are Chinese people a race? Let me know in the comment section below if you think Chinese people are a race. All right. What about Mexicans? Are Mexicans a race? All right. Well, okay. So the answer to all those questions is no. Chinese people are not a race. Mexicans are not a race. Because Chinese is a nationality. A lot of people say racist against China. You can't be. Because China is a nationality. China is a nation. And in China, you have Hmong, you have Han, you have Manchu. Okay, these are ethnicities or races. These are ethnicities or races. Okay? So yeah, Chinese is not a race. Even though in the United States and in the Western world, people are very ignorant and don't know that in China, you have different ethnicities. And ethnicities, ethnos is race by definition. All right? So Mexicans are not a race either. And you hear it all the time. The Mexican, no. La raza, la raza, la raza. No. That's a nationality. In Mexico, you have 97 ethnic groups, or excuse me, 97 languages, something like that. They say dialects, but I'm going to call them languages because they're actually languages. So you have Nahual groups, you have Quiche Maya, you have, of course, the various other ethnicities within Mexico. But Nahual or Aztec descendant people, yeah, are an ethnicity. Okay, so that's an ethnicity. Indigenas in Mexico, there's many of them, many cultures different. And then the Mayan in Mexico, there's different little groups, different languages, different ethnicities. Okay, even though they do lump Mayas together and Aztec together and Spanish Creoles together and then mestizos together, you have language mapping of Mexico. I think it was at 97 languages. I think it's a lot less now because some languages are dying. So we've cleared that up. Racism. Okay, first of all, we have to identify race. So you can't be racist against someone just because of the apparent nationality. All right? So the modern confusion is that race, ethnicity, and nationality are conflated. They're all thrown together. People refer to people that look like me as African American. And I can tell you by definition, I have not a drop of African blood. Not a drop. None of my ancestors are from South Africa. Not a single one. None of them are Zulu or Xhosa or San or any of those ethnicities that are found in South Africa, that nation. African American is kind of implying a nationality because Africa is a nation, South Africa, and then you have it as a prefix to American. Okay, so we've debunked that. Black as a race, there are no black people on the planet. The last black people went extinct like maybe 50,000, 100,000 years ago or something. And they were frightening. And that's why they don't exist anymore. But those of us who've been referred to as black are just Mauryan people from various ethnotypes or anthrotypes or ethnotomes. And we're going to get into that now. So racism, when you look at the deep definitions, doesn't actually exist. It's very poorly defined. And it's like anytime I hear the word racism come out of someone's mouth, I immediately take I take about 90 IQ points off of their apparent score. Because I'll look at a person and be like, okay, that's a 98 IQ or 120 IQ or 76 IQ. And I immediately just take 90 off immediately. Because I'm just like, okay, they should be drooling right now. But that's just me. That's me being an asshole. And I'll own it. I don't like it when people use the word racism because what the fuck does racism mean? It doesn't mean anything. All right? Okay. Especially when people don't know what a race is. All right. So what is a race? Racism, again, is a very poorly designed word. A better word would be ethnotome or anthrotype. And anthro means human. Type just means type. Anthrotype, right? It just means kind, okay? Or type of person. So these terms are deliberately deviate from notions of race while reinforcing the notion of divergence of physical characteristics that can be observed by any human that isn't cognitively impaired. So let's go into cognitive impairment and why racism might be valuable to some people. John, the guy that gave me this question, had a very intelligent. It was a very intelligent question. You know, um, is it is it is it justifiable? I mean, is there a moral quality to racism, and is it ever justifiable? And I will say yes. Racism can be definitely justified. As a matter of fact, racism actually lends to our racial diversity. Big quotes. I'll say ethnic diversity because the word racism is a stupid word. So racism actually contributes to ethnic diversity. Oh, how does that happen? Well, let's go back in time when groups of people that had physical characteristics, divergent physical characteristics, came into contact. Let's say a deeply pigmented Marian meets a very light pigmented Mongolian, and they look different, their hairs are different, their skin is different. If there was absolutely no quote unquote we'll call it racism, right? Then these people would breed to the point of erasing the ethnic diversity that exists between them, the divergence that exists between them. Over time, the progeny of these two groups would be melded together. I mean, and again, that's not entirely true, but that's the best way to describe it, okay? Now, you do see groups of people that are the result of this, and they're referred to as chimeran, but we'll get into that another time. So there is an evolutionary validity for racism, right? The criticism of racism is that it prevents intermarriage, but that's probably what makes it valid or valuable. It preserves genetic diversity by allowing recessive traits in certain ethnic enclaves to be passed on to the progeny. So a recessive trait like blonde hair among Northern Europeans, because blonde hair is a genetic trait among Marian people in the South Pacific, and those genetic traits are divergent. Okay, those show up on different alleles in the genome. So they're not blonde hair in the South Pacific and blonde hair in like Ireland or Scandinavian. Those are not the same thing. Okay, they're absolutely not the same thing. Um, so the recessive traits that, like for instance, blonde hair in Northern Europe would be completely gone because it is a recessive trait. Blonde hair is a recessive trait. Now, the fact that people would say, "Hey, no, we're not going to mix with you because you're different," and we need to keep distance here, is actually a valuable and valid thing. Because imagine if people didn't do that during the 500 years of colonial rule. Blonde hair might be more rare now than it already is. Okay, so we don't want to see that. I love ethnic diversity. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think we need to have as many humans with different hair types, skin types, all that in the world. And I think that racial, I hate that word. I think that ethnic sovereignty is important. It's very important. Another reason that the evolutionary importance of racism is that it provides genetic competitive advantages to certain bloodlines. Again, and I'll just name these things out so that you can look them up. Look up the ghost lineage in West Africa, because it's a new genetic type they found. It's not new. They've been around for over 200,000 years. And then the skeleton tribe in Papua New Guinea. Just look that up if you're watching. I can see that so far this is above the heads of most people, but I'm still going to put it out there because it will get views when I chop it up. So look up those two groups, the skeleton tribe and the ghost lineage, and you'll see that these are genetically divergent people. If they were exposed to the rest of humanity, they might not exist anymore, and we would definitely lose that part of our history as a species. So yes, racism has its evolutionary necessity, and the downsides of racism, we all are familiar with them, right? But there are definitely upsides to it. So why is it justifiable in some cases? Well, for some, first of all, a racist perspective or racist mindset serves people who have inferior intellectual capabilities. And I'm not saying this to be insulting to people that are racist, but I'm saying it necessarily. People that lack intellectual strength or intellectual cognitive abilities need racism because it provides a metric for them to be able to, it's like a simple coding system that allows lower intellects to divvy up society. So let's say you're a person that doesn't really have a strong intellectual capability and you're living in a place like Chicago, all right? And they're people that, I'm going to just say it, people that tend to look like me tend to be associated with more higher rates of violent crimes and things like that. And you don't want to expose yourself to that. But you lack the ability to identify what a violent criminal is based on the way they walk, the way they carry themselves, the way they talk, these sorts of things. And so instead of taking in all those data points, dress, countenance, demeanor, these are things that you don't have the ability to intellectually understand. And so instead what you do is you say, well, all the people that have this color skin, or they just automatically are a danger to me. Okay? Again, this is for a person that literally is on the suffers from cognitive impairment. We're going to put it that way. So I don't get a strike or something. So a person with that cognitive impairment should be they should judge a person based on their color of their skin. They should, for their own safety. Okay. Now, if you are, I think the average IQ in the United States, I think is 98. So if you have like a 98 IQ, you don't need to be using that metric. Okay. But people that use that metric are those who have an intellectual inferiority. And I understand that, and I don't judge it. And I don't think we should ever judge someone who's racist. We should just understand that they are intellectually inferior. And we should treat them with pity and kindness as a result, okay? So let's get to the end here. So how do we overcome racism? Well, you're doing it right now by realizing that racism actually does have its validity. And it does serve some people. Of course, the intellectually inferior and savages, savage tribes and people that need to preserve their genetic sovereignty. And again, this is not people that need to preserve their genetic sovereignty. That's any ethnic group on this planet. Okay. Now, we didn't actually get into ethnotomes. That'll be another video for another day. But anyone that has a genetic enclave that requires preservation might want to utilize racism to do that. Meaning teach your children that your people are the best people and anyone outside of that is bad and evil and dirty and wrong. Okay? Practice the kind of racism that Jesus did, where he wasn't treating people poorly. He understood that everybody was a child of God and everybody was good for God. But maybe, like if you really want to preserve your people, tell your kids, hey, don't marry outside the race. Okay? I'm different. I'm not going to do that because I think that, ethnic mixing, I'm going to call it genetic mixing is a great thing. That's how I got here. And that's how my grandparents and parents and great-grandparents got here, So I think it lends to a lot of, it's, in animal breeding, we call it hybrid vigor. And I think it's very important. But you do need to have those original genetic types, right? If you're breeding Holsteins, you need as cattle, a type of cattle, then you want to have a Holstein. I mean, you can cross it with the Brahmin or some other type of cow, but you want to have those genetic or ethnic divergences. You want to have those groups. And so if you mix everything together, you lose that diversity. And then you lose the genetic types that are very important. For me, I'm like, my kids, I'm like, whatever, I don't care. I think mixing is great. I think it's a wonderful thing. Plus, I like women that don't look anything like me. So, which is healthy, I think. I don't want a woman that looks like my mother and sister. I think that's incestuous. And there are a lot of people that do that. So I don't know. I think racial sovereignty is incestuous. I think it's kind of weird. But, to each his own. So let's close out. How can we finally overcome racism? Like I said, by watching this video, you will end racism. Why? Because you're going to spark your apex human awakening. Geopolitical Christians are absolutely incapable of being racist. Now we will be called racist because we recognize trends, we recognize patterns, and we protect ourselves from those patterns. We distance ourselves from people that exhibit patterns that we see are inferior to our path in life, and that's fine. But we are incapable of being racist because we come from a group of people that sees beyond. Like, we can actually see through and see beyond a person's skin color and all these other things, and actually see the person's character and see whether this person is to our benefit or not. So another way that the final way you can make racism come to an end is check out www.apexhumanity.org. I will link that in the down below, so you can check that out and learn about what the actual races are. There are 5 of them. I'll mention them quickly here. I've mentioned them in many other videos, but they are the Atlantean, Alberian, Marian, Mongolian, and Chimerian. And you'll see that because I've developed a superior categorization system to the race categorization, which you see in the media in most of the world. It's an inferior system to my system, and it just is what it is. And you'll see that when you see it. If you see any problems of mine, let me know so I can polish it so it can be more palatable to the people. All right. So we talked about what racism actually is and found out that it doesn't exist, because what is race is definitely, nobody really even knows what it is. So racism doesn't exist. If you treat a person poorly based on their ethnic enclave or their nationality, that's a different conversation. And it also is an indication of intellectual inferiority on your part, if it's just for that. Now, people can call you racist because you don't like a group of people. There's nothing wrong with disliking a group of people at all. It's actually probably healthy because you recognize what you like and what you don't like. You have the courage to own that. And I think that's okay. All right. It also helps people in that group to be the very best version of themselves, because perhaps, perchance, they can surprise you with their exceptionalism. There are a lot of people who did not like certain group of people that I seem to resemble. I won't name them because they're irrelevant. And I've known people that would befriend me, but would never, hey, what's up, 2 duels? Hey, sorry for inconsistency. It just went away. You're welcome to be here as long or as short as you want, 2 duels. It's always good to see you. Thanks for joining. I'm talking about racism. And I'll just come to a close here talking about, was Jesus racist? We talked about that in the beginning of the video. The answer will surprise you. And is racism justifiable? I'm taking a very honest approach to racism. It's unconventional, it's unpopular, but it's very honest. And so I talked about what racism actually is. And I guess I'll close up. I talked about what racism actually is. We found out that it actually doesn't exist, because I asked the question, can you be racist against someone if they're Mexican? Can you be racist against someone who is Chinese? Can you be racist against someone who is, I'll try and pick another one. British. Man, no, that was not good. Can you be racist against someone who is Italian? The answer to the first 2 is no. You cannot be racist against a Chinese person or a Mexican person, because those are not ethnicities. Can you give me some reasons Jesus could have been racist? Okay. I'll give you 2 reference points in the Bible if you got your pen, but you can also watch this video later. I'll just put a title, was Jesus racist, or something, you'll be able to find it. So Mark 11:17, Jesus was in the temple casting out the money changers, and he said, my house shall be called of all nations a house of prayer. This is showing that Jesus was not racist, okay? Because he included heathens, Gentiles, and pagans in God's kingdom, and said basically all of the people can come and pray to God, not just the special chosen people of Israel, okay? But then in Matthew, which is before Mark, but Jesus says a woman comes to him because her daughter is sick unto death, and she begged him, Jesus, please help me. And this is in Matthew 15:25 through 28. She said she was Canaanite, which is a Gentile, a dirty goyim, dirty Gentile. And she came to him, Jesus, please help my daughter. She's really sick. And Jesus said, I'm just going to read it. It is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs. He referred to her people as dogs. And the term he used there was actually a term of endearment, but it was like a microaggression, slight dig at Canaanite people. He was calling them little dogs, like a dog that you kept in the house, because to Jewish people in first century Judea, dogs were unclean. They were not as, I don't think they were unclean as pigs, but they were like on that level. They were just unclean. And so they didn't like to deal with dogs. And so to call an entire group of people a dogs on Jesus's part would be considered racist by some people. Okay, I don't think he was bad for saying that, because later on she begged him for mercy and said, even the dogs will eat crumbs from the master's table. And then Jesus said, wow, I'm impressed by your faith. I'm paraphrasing. I'm impressed by your faith. And he said, be it unto me as thou wilt. Like, let your wish be fulfilled. Today your daughter will be healed in this very hour. And of course her daughter was healed by Jesus. And so he, a lot of apologists are going to go, technically he wasn't racist. But if anybody said that now to any group of people, they would be immediately cast out as racist. So I'm not saying Jesus was racist. I don't think he was. But I am pointing out where he did show ethnic sovereignty. And he said, look, I'm Jewish and my people are the people of Israel, Jewish people, and they are my priority, not you Canaanites. And so he made that clear to her. But then she begged him and he was like, you know what? I'll change my mind. Just going based on what you said, I don't know if it's true, but him letting people eat dogs was one of his. No, he's yeah, I get what you're saying. No, he was saying basically, I think I would have to read that comment. I love that though. But no, he wasn't letting her eat dogs. He was basically saying that her people were dogs. I hope I read that right, because I read it really quick, so I might have read it wrong. But yeah, he was saying that her people were dogs. And so, he wasn't saying something unusual. All the Judeans of that time were like, yeah, Canaanites are dogs. Samaritans are beneath us. They're unclean. Like, they treated these people so bad. Like, we don't have racism anymore. If you want to compare to like first century Judea, first century India, like, there's no such thing as racism anymore. Like, we don't have, here. I mean, you go to India, there's racism still. You go to like Israel, they still have that stuff. They're blowing each other up. We don't have that here. So I basically went into those two phrases. And there are other instances where Jesus might have been considered racist by his actions or by his words. But I don't think so. I don't think it really matters that he said those things to those people. But if he said it today, people would say, oh yeah, he's racist. So that was basically what that was about. And I went into, like, you can't be racist against Chinese people, Mexicans, or Ghanaians. Why? Because those are nationalities. So there in the United States, people say, oh, that's racist against Chinese people, what Trump said about the Chinese virus. It's like, no, it's not. Because there's no such thing as a Chinese race. There are ethnicities within China, like the Hmong, the Manchu, the Han Chinese, and other ethnicities within China that are native to the nation of China, People's Republic of China, I think it is called. But those are ethnicities. And so if you hate Hmong people or if you hate Han people, then you're anti that ethnicity and by definition kind of racist, right? And of course, Mexico is made up of many ethnicities. There are many diverse cultures in Mexico and have been for thousands of years. There's close to 100 languages spoken in Mexico. They call them dialects, but they're languages. All right, so went into that, talked about the evolutionary validity of racism, how racism actually preserves our genetic diversity, it preserves ethnic diversity. If we all just mix together, I mean, we all are one race, the human race, but if we all mix together, the beautiful redhead and blonde hair and blue eyes and deep, rich brown skin would all be gone, Man, I deal with racism every day at school for being Mexican. They're not being racist against you. They're okay. And then I went into how racism, like what you deal with, the people that are treating you poorly for being like your parents being of Mexican descent or whatever, they're intellectually inferior. So people that are treating you poorly based on your ethnicity or your apparent nationality, like Mexican's a nationality. It's not a race. Even though people say la raza, wait, it's a nationality. Because when you go to Mexico, they're the indigenas, they're mestizos, they're Creoles, like Criollos or Espanol. Like there's all kinds of different people in Mexico, different ethnicities. So when people treat you bad because you're quote unquote Mexican, I'm being put big quotes there, because it's likely you're American and just have Mexican national heritage. Then they're just in the people that treat you bad because of your heritage, your Mexican heritage, are intellectually inferior. They don't have the intellectual capacity to understand your value as a person. And I'm saying that, well, let's let them be racist because they can't help it. They are socially retarded, is what I'm saying. And as a result, they have to use racism to navigate the world. And I use the example of a person who's cognitively messed up, and they're in Chicago and they see a person that looks like me. Well, statistically, people that look like me in that city are known to be very violent and are perpetrators of violent crimes. Unfortunately, okay, I have a lot of ancestral links to the Mississippi Valley, and Chicago is one of the big centers. And so, unfortunately, if you lack the ability to look at a person and tell by their demeanor what they're a danger to you, you may have to use racism. You may have to just look at a person's physical appearance and say they're dangerous. And so that's okay. I think that's okay because some people are just, again, they don't have the brains necessary to look at you and say, okay, Two Duels is a great person, and I don't care if he has Mexican heritage. It doesn't matter. This is a good person. This is a useful person, a valuable person, right, within society. And so I think that racism should be allowed for people that don't have an intellectual capacity. And if someone is racist, I think we should just say, okay, they're just intellectually, like they don't have the intelligence to be less than racist. Like they're stupid. Okay, we can't help them if they're racist. And I think it's okay. You just take 30 IQ points off of their score, and it is what it is. So, uh, so that's basically what this conversation is about. Like the value that racism has. Look, I never have experienced racism ever once in my life. Okay, and I lived in tiny towns throughout the United States with people with Confederate flags, KKK, skinheads, neo-Nazis, all of this. I dealt with all those things. And I learned that, well, I'm Marian. That's my ancestry. Okay, Jesus loves what you're doing, spreading his name. Thank you. Thank you. And so, I dealt with people acting a certain way toward me because of my complexion and my hair texture, but that had nothing to do with me. That had everything to do with them. And I don't see it as racism. Even if they called me nigger or threw things at me, yeah, it is what it is. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'll make sure I'm in the right place next time. So, it's like I realize that I'm a child of the Most High. You're a child of the Most High. We're all children of the Most High. And as apex humans, we are not victims of anything but our own mind's creation. Because God protects us, God provides for us, God surrounds us with his love and his power. And if you're a child of the Most High, you can walk in this world as a king, as a queen. Literally, as Jesus said, you can walk in this world as a God. Jesus said that in John 10:34 and 35. Okay? And so he was speaking to people like you, Two Duels, and people like myself, and people that appreciate this kind of content because we are universal humans. We've transcended skin color. We've transcended all of that stuff. And so, all of the little things like people poking at you and all this stuff, you're fine. God approves of you. God made you perfect the way you are. God surrounds you with his light and his love. And allow God to continue to lead you into the great life that God has for you. And so that's what I have to say about thank you, Two Duels, for being awesome and showing up. And so to close out, we talked about lower intellects require racism. We talked about the evolutionary validity of racism, what racism actually is. And overcoming racism happens automatically when you activate your apex human awakening. As geopolitical Christians, we are incapable of racism because we are children of the Most High. And we recognize our brothers and sisters in humanity. And whether we want to honor our ethnic group and just marry our ethnic group and have children in that ethnic group, that is okay. If we want to mix and go out and have other people, that's okay. God approves of all of it. So God bless you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for watching, liking, sharing, and commenting below. Also, subscribe for more. I got to read this, I'll forget it. Make sure you subscribe for more brilliant content like this. You know you want to. Thank you for being blessed, and thanks for showing up. Thank you to Doodles again, and all you who watched. I will see you in the next video. Racism is on another level of sin. We are all humans. Amen. And but let's transcend it. Let's rise above it completely so that racism just becomes nothing to us. And that's my desire for you. God bless you, Doodles. Thank you, everyone that's watched. I'll see you in the next video.